Hey YouTube, Gordon Miller here. Okay, I'm finally getting caught up on some prior requests. I had one request that was through an answer in Quora that I thought I'd make a video on and help elaborate more on that. And that was, how do you pick a partner for one of your companies? And that's a really good question. I've had a number of partners over the years, and I'm not gonna name names here. Some of them have been more successful than others. In my answer on Quora, I talked about really excessive displays of wealth, where I've run into guys that wanted to be my partner on a deal, and they were wearing $5,000 suits or more. They had on $30,000 watches. They drove $300,000 cars, and they talked about how successful they were and how much money they had made and things like that. Well, there's nothing wrong with that if that's the case. But what I found to be true more often than not is people that waste their own money sometimes will waste the company's money. And so for me, it's a big red flag. Now, I can hardly complain because all my suits, because of my size, are all handmade in Hong Kong. Suits are about $1,500 and when I posted the answer, people were on me for, oh, that's excessive. Yeah, for a lot of people it is when you can buy a suit for $300. The trouble is that over a 10-year period or longer, 20 years even, I have bought suits that I paid $1,500 for that lasted more than 10 years. And so when you can get really good wear out of something and you can feel like $1 million wearing it, the aggregated cost is actually much lower. So if you think about it, you look at the number of years of use you get out of a suit. If I've got some suits in my collection that I bought in 1999, they don't still fit, and I had a number of shirts that I paid significantly for. They were all custom-made shirts, and they wore for 10 years, as opposed to shirts that wore out in 1 or 2 years. So if you buy a shirt for $70 and it lasts a year or two, then look at that against spending maybe $180 or $200 on a shirt that may last as long as 10 years. So you look at you have to buy that shirt, like a simple white shirt. This one's actually a custom-made shirt, but you look at the quality of the fabric and you look at the wear of it and the longevity, and you're going to get a lot more use out of something, and you love it while you're using it. So I tend to do the calculation on the cost-benefit analysis on something so I understand what the value proposition is. So when I talk about buying a $1,500 suit, I get about 5 times the amount of wear out of it that I might for a $300 suit. So I've had suits that have lasted 20 years. I've worn them consistently for more than 10 years before they didn't fit anymore. And they could be altered a lot more easily, and they look fantastic while you're wearing them. So understand that when I say, I spend $1,500 on a suit, I get the same or very similar quality out of a $1,500 suit as I would somebody else would out of a $5,000 suit. But they're not going to get any more wear out of it, and it's not going to look any better. Really, it's a marginal difference. So in economics, it's called a point of diminishing marginal utility. Beyond a certain point, you have to really kind of do the analysis, and beyond a certain point, there really isn't any benefit to spending any more money on something. So for me, I mentioned about somebody's watch. Jeez. Sorry about that. I forgot to turn my phone off. So anyway, the issue that a lot of people have is in terms of the cost of somebody's car, cost of somebody's suit. What I have been looking at also is the cost of things like jewelry. So I used to have a very large watch collection. It was worth more than $200,000, and I sold it and used that money to invest in starting more of my companies that I wanted to do, because it was a needless waste of money. I could only wear one watch at a time. I had more than 20 watches, and I had a box of 24 that was my primary box, and I had a couple of winders that had other watches in it. So I guess I had about 27 or 28 watches altogether. And the average cost was, between $10,000 and $20,000, and so I was able to sell those. And I'm wearing a Seiko Oriental model that cost me like $300. And great watch. I enjoy wearing it. I've been a Seiko fan since my father was a fan of the early models in the US back in the 1970s. And I wish I still had some of those original Seiko chronographs, especially the ones with the red markers and things like that with the black face. Those are extremely rare, and I had one. It was great. So anyway, so that gets rid of the idea of the suits and the watches. I find that, frankly, a $300 watch is just as good as a $5,000 watch or a $10,000 watch. There really isn't any. It tells great time. In fact, some of the more expensive watches just keep terrible time. So, it doesn't really pay to have money being wasted on stuff like that. And I commented on somebody spending $300,000 on a car. Well, my 2012 Bentley GTC was, $240,000. So I'm, certainly no place to talk there. Currently, I'm driving a BMW X5M. It's about $118,000 fully loaded, and so that's not a whole lot better. Well, that's true, but I'm a car guy. I've had over 2.7 million in cars, it just depends on what I'm buying, not over 2.7 million. I've spent over 2.7 million in cars in the last 27 years. So, it just depends on what it is that you like. It's an indulgence for sure, but it's a BMW, and almost every BMW model these days has something that approaches $100,000. So it's very difficult, it's the kind of thing that I enjoy, but it has the exact same horsepower, my BMW does, as the Bentley GTC had. It has 567 horsepower, and it's a lot more comfortable and a lot more practical. It's half the price. So, I look for people that make good decisions with money to be my partners. And when you have somebody who is really into the ostentatiousness of the wealth, even if they have hundreds of millions of dollars, it still isn't very good choices. It took me a long time to come to the realization that stuff like that is a huge waste of money. And I've spent millions and millions of dollars on stuff that was just a complete waste of money. Watches, cars, all sorts of stuff. But I don't recommend it. And the great thing about some of the younger guys out there who have made it big, other than the fact they might buy themselves a McLaren 570 or something, you see a lot of the guys don't waste money on stuff like that. And I really like that. They dress pretty simply, sometimes even jeans and a t-shirt, and they got nothing to prove to anybody. So my hat's off to you guys. The fact that you guys have found that out early in life, and you don't care about what clothes cost. You're wearing an inexpensive watch, but it's a nice one. That's great. You guys learned early on. That's terrific. And everybody goes through that phase. But once I turned 50, I wasn't really interested in any of that anymore. So I'll be 53 here in November. So for me, it really isn't any benefit anymore to doing stuff like that. So, and I found that when I went to go recruit partners for opportunities, a lot of the folks that had ostentatious displays of just obscene wealth, those people, really the only thing they brought to the table was their checkbook. And I've often said that, I really don't want a partner who only brings their checkbook to the table. It's not really what most companies need. Now, most of those guys have contacts and Rolodex that's really pretty powerful. The only problem is that I found that some guys don't use their connections to reach out and close deals. I've had folks say, "Oh yeah, I've done this or I've done that," and hired them and they did nothing, or brought them on as partners and they did nothing. And so you have to be really pretty mindful of that. A lot of times when I brought somebody on, who said that they had connections and they had a Rolodex. And after a year of really not producing anything, I had to ask them, I'm like, what's up? I mean, we've invested like 150 grand in your overall salary over the last year, and you haven't done anything. You've brought in zero. So what's the deal? Oh, well, I just don't feel right about reaching out to them. Well, you don't feel right about reaching out to them. Why do you think you're here? I mean, you got hired on the pretense that you had a huge Rolodex and you were going to call everybody, and you haven't even picked up the phone and called anybody. So that person got on the phone and called somebody, and we had a contract within 30 days. So it's one of those kind of things where I think people don't understand the realities of what that's like. I had somebody else that had sold hardware, and they wanted to sell software in our services. And they're like, I've sold $3 billion in hardware. I can triple your business and things like that. They lasted 6 months, and after 6 months, it's like, you didn't sell anything. I mean, sell one thing, sell, something, just, call everybody who bought hardware and let's see what software they need. And nothing. So you have to be careful who you bring in terms of partners or business development people or salespeople. And that's why I really enjoy partnering with folks where I have an opportunity to be able to do the technical development and help them bring something to market, and we can be partners on it. It's their idea, and they've got a good start on it, and we can help kind of really take it to the next level. I really enjoy that more than a lot of other things. In terms of my partners, let's see. I'll just kind of randomly go through things. So in terms of making the transition from education to the business world, which is what I did. I had started 3 labs at Virginia Tech, and I had moved from the education environment where I spent 5 years as director of the multimedia lab at Virginia Tech, and I spent about a year and a half, 2 years as a co-founder of the Lab for Scientific Visual Analysis at Virginia Tech. And I had also helped build the architecture lab, computing lab, when I was a graduate student there. So I had experience in building the labs. We had been doing some great research. It was being well recognized by folks, and we had 700 lab tours in the first 3 years. Every one of the Fortune 500 plus, 118 different delegations from different countries. So it was great. I really got a lot of experience, and I got a chance to meet a lot of people. But making the transition from education to the business world is often very difficult. I've looked at the transition of some of my colleagues, as well as some of my partners who have transitioned out of education. And the hardest thing for them was to give up their tenured faculty position, because, as long as you've got a safety net, something you can go back to, you're not going to put it all on the line. You'll go into every meeting thinking, I hope this meeting goes well, but if it doesn't, I can still go back to my teaching job. So that's the biggest problem that I see with most of those. I even told my partners in one deal, I was like, look, I'm not doing anything else to help this company if you don't quit your job. You need to go in tomorrow and quit your job. You can't go back. And you either go forward or, we don't go forward at all. And so he quit his job. I was surprised, but and that company now is very successful. So it's all because there was no path back, and you have to have that. You really do. It's all about having the right path, the right trajectory, and making sure that you're all in. If you're not all in, why would I be all in if you're not all in? So let's see. The other thing is about friends. I've had friends as partners in a couple of different efforts, and they just didn't go. It didn't go very well. Likely because I tended not to follow my own rules, so I did things that I probably wouldn't have done in a regular deal. Like, for instance, instead of taking 50% of a deal, I only took 30%, and so I had no control over what they did, and they weren't making the right decisions for the company, and so I had to shut it down. And then there are partners that just aren't good at the ordinary day-to-day operational stuff, where they don't pay their bills, or they don't do things like that. And then you have to either come in and take over, or hire somebody else to take over, or you have to shut it down. And so, but you don't know that about folks. They can be great at the profession that they're at. They can be great in lots of ways, but they often aren't. Not used to operating a business. They've worked for other people and things like that, but they've never owned their own company. They've never worked in that environment, so they have no idea. And then those are terrible partners to have. I have one example of a partner that I have that's done great. David Bradshaw is my partner in Interactive GIS, and we developed the interface for the platform, and we've worked on our capacity management, operation, and maintenance solutions, CMOM, with them, and their stuff has been the base of 7 or 8 platform solutions that G3 has done. It's just been phenomenal, and David's been a great partner, really has. And he's the ideal partner. He is genuine and honest and trustworthy, and religious guy and a family guy and things like that. He and I have been working together since 2005, so over 12 years, and it's just been amazing. I love partnerships like that. Some of my new partnerships also have been going really well, and the new stuff we've started since being on Quora. And I'll go into more detail about those as we go forward. But for now, one of the things that you have to look at is making sure that as you pick a partner, they also really can hold up their end of the deal. Most of my partners that deal with the operational side do a really good job, and that's great, because I really am not into having to process payroll or make sure the electrical bill is paid. I let other people worry about that. But somebody has to. Somebody has to be looking at it, or it doesn't get done, and then that's not good. So those are the kind of things that you look for. I've had situations where company funds were used for personal things. I don't like that. The only time that I use company funds for something is when I own 100% of the company, and then the company is able to pay me back, or I pay the company back, and that's the only time I do something like that. When you have a partner in something, and then you have a questionable expense, and you're like, why did you spend $10,000 on this or $5,000 on that? And it's like, well, I wanted it, and or we needed it. Well, we didn't need it. I didn't need it. You didn't need it. When you spend $10,000 of company money on stuff like that, what you end up doing is 5,000 of that, 10,000. If that's 10,000 more in profit, 5,000 of that profit is mine, and 5,000 of it is your partner's. And so if my partner spends something out of profit that really the company doesn't need, then that's part of my money. That's money that I would normally have gotten to spend on something that I need. And so those are the kind of things you have to worry about in terms of, and you have to watch things very carefully. It helps to have great accountants and great attorneys. I can't stress enough how critical it is that you have attorneys and accountants that really know what they're doing, because otherwise you're going to end up with a real nightmare situation. So you can never skimp on accounting or legal services. It doesn't matter how much they cost. It'll always save you more money in the end by having a really significant quality professional on your team. It's an amazing thing. It really is. So let's see. In terms of other things, I've had partners that overestimated their ability to position the thing or bring it to market, or overestimated the potential for something, or they underestimated it, and then the company gets overwhelmed by the opportunities. And we've seen that a couple of times, especially in our aviation division, where we were hoping to sell 6 or 8, 10 planes, and I went on tour and all across the world, and we sold 150 planes in in a matter of like a month. And unfortunately, the manufacturer could only make 6 planes a year. So closing a deal on 150 planes wasn't any help because they weren't able to fill the orders. So I had to go back and apologize to the people that wanted what we had were going to provide them. And so that you can grow too fast or you can be too small and things like that. So it really just depends. I mean, I've had all sorts of situations. One of the best things we've done so far is on our IEPplan.com solution that works with kids with special needs for both IEP plan in schools, and we have IEPplan.com and 504plan.com for kids with ADHD and other kids with special needs like autism and other things like that. My two partners on that, Candace and Lorraine, are amazing. They're out there doing the monthly seminars, they're doing the trade show circuit, they're out there connecting with advocates and families. They're working their ass off trying to make sure that they plug into opportunities. And they're phenomenal. I mean, they really are terrific. I can't say enough about just how great a job they're doing. And that's what you want. You want people that are really fully engaged, that see the value and are going to bring that value to the table. So yeah, I mean that's really in terms of partners. It varies so much. People have asked, so have you ever made a mistake in picking a partner? Sure. Do we ever work out some of those mistakes? Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've certainly found ways around certain issues or roadblocks or things like that. And sometimes we don't, and eventually something ends up, getting shut down. But the reality is most things, move on and go beyond whatever the roadblock is. But now that we're bringing on, I have 12 companies altogether. Another company that I've just started is with a friend of mine who has already had one successful exit with Yahoo, and we're bringing another opportunity online. I'm a minority partner in that. I usually don't take minority positions, but in something like this, it was well worth it. And I think the world of him. I think he's great. I think the solution's going to be amazing. So, and as we bring on 10 new companies from Quora this year and 10 new companies next year for the 20 that we've been tracking, it's really going to be important to make sure that I've got the right partners. So, usually I would do 2 companies a year, like I've been doing for the last few years. And, so we'd bring on 2 companies and wait 2 years and bring on 2 more. We did 2 companies in 2014 and 2 companies in 2016. And then now we're working on bringing 10 companies to market in 2017 to 2018. 10 companies instead of 2 companies is a huge commitment. And so I tell you, it's an amazing thing to have to try to do. And I apologize to some of you guys who, it's taken me weeks to get back to, and we're working on trying to juggle, several companies coming online at the same time. I had one guy, bitch me out saying that, hire an assistant. Well, if I had an assistant that could do what I do, then that would be great, but they can't. There is no such thing. So there isn't an opportunity for me to hire somebody to help do what needs to be done. I'm the only one who can do it, and I have a pretty darn good success rate at getting it done. I just can't do, 10 things simultaneously. They're going to have to, there's going to have to be a prioritization based on the level of opportunity and the nature of the timing of things. So some people are, getting a little upset because it's taking longer than normal. I understand. I mean, for them, waiting a week or 2 weeks or more to, get something done is not easy. But, it is what it is. I'm doing the best I can. I think we're going to have some tremendous success based off of the things that are being launched now. So hopefully by the end of 2020, we'll have a total of 30 companies based out of G3I Ventures, and that'll be terrific. Where our goal is 50 companies by 2025. And I think we can get there. And the goal would be to, before my 60th birthday, which is going to be, I guess that's 7 years from now, I'd like to still have 50 operating companies and continue to move into a basic level of operational activity. So, Anyway, I'll have more to report on the quality of partners and how to pick a partner. Of course, if you want to partner with an organization like ours at either G3.com to do the development work for something, or G3I Ventures to become a part of it and help bring it to market, happy to take a look. People are still submitting to ideas at G3.com, and you can email your example of what you want to do there. Happy to take a look at it, and I really appreciate everybody sharing all their information. It's been some great stuff. Some things really aren't viable, and people really haven't done their homework or put in the work that's really needed. But the reality is, most people that do submit the really good stuff have really spent some tremendous time thinking about it, and I love it. I really appreciate everybody's time and effort, and that's my input about how to pick a partner. Thanks.